So, Eric, we're talking a little bit about Nitro, and that was a long time ago. But let's talk about something else that happened a long time ago. Frank Bruno became a Top Guy member here at adfreeshows.com over 5 years ago. It was actually April 1st, April Fool's Day 2020. Remember that, Eric? We were all locked down back then. We couldn't leave our houses. It was crazy. But
wow,
that's when Ad Free Shows was born, and Frank Bruno jumped on board. We appreciate his patronage. It's 5 years and running. I want to ask you about Nitro, though, because this particular Nitro we're covering had one of the most impactful and important angles that had happened on Nitro up to this point. Mean Gene's doing an interview with Hulk Hogan, and he's talking about how he got advice from a young sick boy who gave him advice on how he could beat the big, mean, stinky, nasty giant at Halloween Havoc. But as he starts to head back to the locker room, a woman threw something in Hogan's eyes. That woman turned out to actually be Kevin Sullivan in drag, which is hilarious. He's going to be joined by the Giant and Zodiac. But then they do something that we'd never seen before, Eric. And I know you're laughing like I am about Kevin Sullivan in drag, because these guys are clearly just trying to pop each other and make each other laugh in the backstage area. But what they do with Hulk is something I've never seen before. They shave his mustache off. Now, this is a pretty iconic deal in Hulk Hogan fandom, and I know that most people now say, yeah, it's just a mustache. That's kind of silly. But it was such an iconic part of his look. It just felt, I don't know, in an era where they still had hair matches and they were meaningful, changing Hulk Hogan's mustache, he doesn't even look like Hulk Hogan without the mustache. Was this a hard sell for him? Was he doing it anyway for a movie role? How does this come to be a situation where he doesn't stroke the mustache and say, that doesn't work for me, brother? How do we get here?
I'm not 100% sure, but I would bet a lot of money it had to do with a movie role or a commercial opportunity. Because otherwise, there's no way he's doing that.
Right. I would think so.
He's not selling that hard for I don't see it. I think there was an agenda attached to that creative. And I don't think it had anything to do with wrestling. I think there was either commercial role, TV role, or something to that effect.
In an alternate universe, and I get that what you just laid out is probably the real situation. He knew he had to shave it for a role or a shoot or something. So let's do something with it on TV. I get that's how it came to be. But don't you wish, with the benefit of hindsight, you could have actually had a match where if he lost, he got it shaved off or something like that? Like you could build.
Yeah. If that would have been a discussion that happened 4 weeks in advance or 6 weeks in advance, and you built a story around it, I mean, it would have been so much better. But this was probably, let's see, we're shooting TV on Monday, Friday afternoon. He probably got a phone call from his agent, and there's going to be an audition on Wednesday. So what can we do? Going to have to shave your mustache off anyway. Let's work it into a storyline. It's very conceivable that it came about kind of like within that kind of a time frame.
When we're thinking about, I know this sounds silly, but we've heard a lot of hair matches. I mean, we've all had like favorite hair matches. Maybe we remember this guy or that guy. The facial hair is almost never a thing. But if a guy had a really long beard, man, that would take a lot longer to grow than growing your hair back out, right? That's a much bigger deal. Why don't we see more of that, do you think?
I don't know. Hair's not in. I don't know.
When you think about all the different looks that you went through in WCW, I don't necessarily mean you personally, but I mean there were lots of characters evolving. Rey Mysterio comes to mind. Was there a conversation you ever had with someone where you said, hey, I'd like for you to cut your hair, and they were hesitant or resistant to that? Do you remember having that situation in WCW?
I don't. I don't. I don't think I ever had that conversation. Maybe somebody will pop up out of the woodwork that'll say, remember that time back in catering when I asked you if I want, maybe something like that, but nothing comes to mind that was any kind of a serious conversation.
One of the angles that Jeff's dad, Jerry, did in Memphis that Jeff still talks about to this day is there was a match with Bill Dundee and Jerry Lawler. Jerry Lawler put his hair on the line, and Bill Dundee put his wife's hair on the line. And everyone just assumed, well, of course, Jerry's going to lose. And Jerry won, and they shaved that woman's head. Mrs. Dundee got a haircut. Can you even imagine if they tried to pull that off in 2025? Like, Would there be activist group after them, or what would happen there?
That is so ridiculous that I love it. Number one, it's so Memphis. It's not even funny. That is, if you have to try to give a territory a personality, that scene you just described the Memphis territory. Wow, it's crazy. What would happen if you did it today? I don't know. Probably end up being some version of a Broadway play. I don't know, man. It's so crazy it could work. I don't know. I like it. It's crazy fun, man. Wow.
This is the era where you're doing a 2-hour Nitro, and on this particular show, you're shaving off, you've got, if Lex loses in his match with Randy Savage, he's got to leave WCW. You're shaving off Hulk Hogan's mustache. You've got Eddie Guerrero and Dean Malenko wrestling a match. You've got the giant choke slamming dudes left and right. And you've got Ric Flair and Arn Anderson in a match building towards, or as a fallout of their September Fall Brawl pay-per-view, but really to set up the inevitable turn where it feels like Ric Flair at this point has no friends whatsoever. He's a man with no country, and Sting is saying, "Hey, I'll have your back, but if you double cross me, I'll leave you for dead." And of course we know exactly what happens. Rick does that, puts the Horsemen back together. But how much fun were the real life Ric Flair and Arn Anderson having working together? Because this is the only period of time where that really happened. They were tag team partners forever, but the idea that they worked against each other, it's just these few months here, August, September, October of 95. Did they enjoy that, or do you remember them being hesitant to do that?
I'm going to come back to that, and finish with that. But what was interesting, the way you kind of described what was going on with the show this particular week, and you kind of ran through who was on the card. What a well-balanced show that was.
Yes.
If I dare say so myself. If you look at, from the Dusty Rhodes perspective of wrestling's a buffet, or whoever came up with that, I think it was Dusty, meaning there's a little bit of something for everybody. And like the best buffets are when you go and every selection is outstanding. If you got Ric Flair and Arn Anderson, there's a segment of the WCW audience that was really, really into that. The former Jim Crockett promotion audience, the Southeastern territory, right?
Yeah.
The Florida territory. People that grew up and were wrestling fans in their preteens and early teens were big fans of this in their 20s and early 30s. That was a very important demo. 18 to 39, 18 to 45. Really critical demo for Nitro. So that match served that audience. You've got, Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio? No, Dean Malenko.
Yeah.
Right? Pretty cutting edge stuff at that time, right? For a mainstay. You've got the attraction, the giant. When he's early in his career, he was awesome because all he had to do is be a giant and choke slam people. And it was so much fun. It was kind of like Goldberg spearing people. We just didn't let it last quite as long. But you had the attraction, you had the traditional audience, you had the new audience, the younger demo with Eddie and Dean. We had it all, but it was very well balanced. Back to Rick and Arn. I couldn't tell you, other than observing, being around them after the show, backstage, occasionally before the show, and just in general. They were having a blast from my perspective. Now, they may tell you differently. There may have been something going on I don't know about. But whenever I was around and after the shows, inevitably, the energy was really positive. I suspect because they absolutely 100% trusted each other at that time in the ring. And probably outside of the ring for all I know. But specifically in the ring, they both knew that they were in there with one of the very best in the business as far as their ability to tell stories and really put on a good show. And they knew each other inside and out. How could you not have fun doing that? It's not even like going to work. So that's my perspective, though.
We should mention, as a reminder, this is October 2nd, 1995, and this is the show where Lex Luger wrestles Randy Savage, and if Lex loses, he has to leave the company. They shave off Hulk Hogan's mustache, Eddie Guerrero gets a win over Dean Malenko, and Ric Flair wrestles Arn Anderson. Now, you might be asking yourself, what was Monday Night Raw doing? Razor Ramon beat the 1-2-3 Kid in under 3 minutes. Hunter Hearst Helmsley, who was still the blue blood from Greenwich, Connecticut, beat Barry Horowitz in 5.5 minutes. PG-13, that's another Memphis act, JC Ice and Wolfie D, got a win over Al Brown and Sonny Rogers. It was an enhancement match. And Bret Hart wrestled Jean-Pierre Lafitte, a.k.a. the Pirate. This is a terrible time for WWE Creative. And yes, they have a lot of stars, but they're not doing much with them, and they're not in their highest and best uses as of yet. You guys had a clearly better show that night. I mean, I think everyone would say objectively your show was better that night. Don't you think?
I would imagine. But what's also obvious to me there is our show was targeting 18 to 49, which was the mission for Nitro. And their show, based on what you just told me, was the perfect illustration of what I've been saying forever on this show. WWE, until we forced him to follow our lead, however you want to say it, was clearly targeting teens and preteens. And just you describing the two shows should make that pretty clear.
If you're curious, they were head to head and it was a tie, 2.5 to a 2.5. But listen, if I was a wrestling fan choosing between those two shows today in 2025, I wouldn't hesitate. I'd pick the WWE.
The really interesting rating, because everybody likes to look at ratings and try to tell a story based on their biases. But what would be really telling is to find out what the rating was the following week.
It was tied again, 2.6, 2.6.
Wow. Okay. I was hoping for a different number. I would have thought that it would have been up more than that.
Yeah, the following week, 2 weeks later, Raw would actually go ahead 2-6 to 2-2, but you would flip flop it the next week, and you would be 2-6 to their 2-2. So we're knee deep in the battle of the Monday Night Wars. SaveWithConrad.com.
My name is Rajiv. I'm in Sacramento, California. I came to Save with Conrad because I've heard Conrad talk about how he helps people all the time save money and the best route to go for getting some mortgages and finances done. And having heard so many different testimonials in the past, it made the most sense to go this route. We were in the market for a new house and we wanted to know what we could afford. So we spoke with Steve and then Diane to get through the pre-approval process to see what we could afford. And then once we were able to understand that aspect of it, that was when we were able to shop around for a house to get a mortgage through Save with Conrad. Everybody on the team was great. Everybody really explained everything fully to where it was more in like layman's terms to where I could understand it as someone not in the business or having shopped around for houses too many times. So being able to understand every step of the process and talking with everyone on the team about that was really, really helpful. And it made me feel really confident that I was going the right route. I would definitely recommend Save with Conrad to others. I know that sometimes people look at it and they go, oh, they're based in Alabama, what could they help me with? But I'm out here in California and they were able to square everything away and get things done really quickly, as opposed to sometimes even people out here don't move as quickly as the Save with Conrad team. So everything was really well done, really efficient, and I would definitely recommend Save with Conrad to others. My name is Rajiv. I'm in Sacramento, California, and I was able to get into my dream home with SaveWithConrad.com.
NMLS number 2129, equal housing lender. SaveWithConrad.com.